The transition to the incoming Trump administration has preoccupied all of Washington. That includes the diplomatic corps, where relationships equal results. Something I talked about with a veteran diplomat, Dame Karen Pierce, who's been the UK's ambassador to the US since the first Trump administration. We sat down at the British ambassador's residence here in Washington as the embassy prepared to mark Winston Churchill's 150th birthday last weekend. A celebration complete with English sparkling wine and a reminder of our special relationship.
I've met President Trump and I know him, and that's certainly extremely helpful. Not all the people will be the same. Some of them we know from the Hill. I've met Senator Rubio, I've met Congressman Mike Waltz, very fine people. And then we'll just try and make as many new relationships as we can. And what we really want are not just friendly relations, obviously. We want productive ones. We want to get to a stage where you can have deep conversations about the direction of policy, whether that's Treasury, foreign policy, defense, or health.
You mentioned Mike Waltz. You do have a special relationship with him, if I can use that phrase, following your time serving as UK ambassador to Afghanistan. How has that helped to create a bond between the two of you? What are your conversations about?
Well, the first thing we talked about when we first met was Afghanistan. I actually met the congressman's wife first. That's how I knew he'd had this very distinguished service in Afghanistan, Green Beret, extremely impressive. But of course, Congressman Waltz has also worked on the policy side of earlier Republican administrations. And we have lots of stories about different parts of Afghanistan where we've each been. I should explain, I was an ambassador. I wasn't in the military. He's had a much more adventurous time than me.
Well, here we are sitting under the portrait of Winston Churchill on his 150th birthday. Pretty remarkable as we look at the landscape today and go back to that moment when he made the first framing of the Cold War. He talked about the Soviet threat.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent.
He talked about the Iron Curtain moving across Europe. What would he make of this moment in time that we're in now as we see an emboldened Vladimir Putin and the war in Ukraine?
I think he would feel that his instincts on Russia were proved right again. It was striking how, even though during the Second World War he was very ready to work with Stalin and the Russians because we had a common enemy, it was very striking how quickly his thoughts started to turn to the Soviet Union as antagonistic to the West, and he was proved right on that. Whether or not he'd call it another Iron Curtain, I don't know. I think it's something that Putin would like to do, to have more influence in Eastern Europe. You see it in some of the candidates standing in elections in East European countries. Some of them are close to Putin. But you also see other parts of Eastern Europe already in the European Union really want to solidify their relationships within the European Union and within NATO. So I think it is different. I think Churchill would be very pleased to see that NATO had its 75th anniversary.
What would he make of this debate then, particularly in the United States, about what to do with NATO, about whether to support the war in Ukraine, about what role the United States should play in this alliance?
He was a very firm believer in leadership by the United States. He had a rather elegant phrase about the old world giving way to the new, by which he meant the sorts of leadership roles Britain had played in the world in the 19th century would now be assumed by America. And I think he'd be very proud of NATO, which is fundamentally a defensive alliance, a political alliance. I think he'd be very proud of the way NATO has kept going. And I think overall he'd be here in America. He was half American, his mother was American, encouraging American leadership on the global stage.
To what extent, in your experience in the residence, the embassy, and to what extent you will continue to work here, have you been able to employ the tools of the embassy, whether it's the building that we're in, the architecture, the events that you put together here, or the bounties of the kingdom, whether it's a sparkling wine or a whiskey, a single malt that somebody might not have unless they were sitting down with you? This is all part of your job, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's exactly what diplomats do. Some people are unkind enough to imply that's all diplomats do. But I want to assure your audience that's not the case. We do as much with hard power. The defence, security, intelligence relationship between Britain and the US is vital. Again, Churchill, that same speech you mentioned, was the first time the phrase "the special relationship" was coined.
That's right.
So I just want to point that out. But you're right, soft power. We try to serve British produce at the embassy. We don't always succeed, but we do as much as we can. We have very good sparkling wine now.
Yes, right.
It is one of the very few positive things to emerge from climate change. It has made the south of the United Kingdom extremely prolific and proficient at producing sparkling
wine. What do you
wine.
make of that? So climate change will make the UK the next major wine destination?
Oh, I don't know if I'd go that far. And there are lots of huge downsides to climate change.
Well,
but one of the things is this wonderful sparkling wine. So we try to serve that. I think all in all, we want the American people to be interested in Britain, and we want young Brits to be interested in America.
You're the first woman to have become the UK's permanent representative to the United Nations, Britain's first female ambassador to the US. That, by definition, makes you a pioneer. In that period of time, how has your business, the world of diplomacy, and Washington changed?
Oh, I've never been called a pioneer before.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I'm a city-loving, indoors person, so I'm very pleased to be called a pioneer. People always think diplomacy changes a lot, and the tools change. So obviously we have social media now, which is very relevant to soft power. Obviously we have iPhones and the internet. Where the internet was only just coming in when I was first here 30 years ago.
But also in that time, when you look up from the table, you see a more diverse room, and you see more women, do you not?
More women, more people of ethnic minority origin in Britain too. I mean, America is a very diverse society, and I think people don't always realise how diverse Britain is. Right. And one of the things we like to do in soft power is think of ways of celebrating and using that diversity to bring different groups of people together.
As we were discussing, this is the bounty of the UK. What do we have here?
This is an English sparkling wine from Kent. It's just won awards. It sells very well over here. We try and serve it whenever we can. Churchill's favourite champagne was Pol Roger, but that was because the English sparkling wine industry wasn't going in Churchill's day.
Got it.
So we're very proud of this, and just delighted to be able to toast you and toast America.
What a treat. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
And thanks
happy
for having us at
Thanksgiving.
the embassy. Cheers.
Very good to see you. Thank you.